Have you ever studied for 3 or 4 hours straight in the evening, only to open your book the next morning and feel like your brain got completely wiped clean? Everything looks kinda familiar, but you can't remember anything. You end up thinking, man, I'm just not smart enough. But here's the truth, it's not that you're not smart. You've just been learning the wrong way. The human brain is literally designed to forget, not to remember. Within just 24 hours, it throws away almost everything you learned, unless you know how to hack it. Meanwhile, Japanese students can memorize over 2,000 complex kanji characters and remember them for years, sometimes for their entire lives. It's not because they're smarter than you. It's because they don't study the way you do. They don't just reread the material, highlight everything, or copy notes mindlessly. They use the right techniques so their brain literally can't forget. And in this video, I'm going to reveal to you 7 science-backed methods that Japanese students have been using for hundreds of years. These will help you remember things faster, longer, and almost permanently, whether you're preparing for college entrance exams, IELTS, or you just want to truly master what you're learning. Let's dive right in. The first method is called active recall, also known as active learning. This might sound a little fancy, but it's actually something we're all pretty familiar with. To put it simply, the normal way most of us study is by rereading the theory, listening to lectures, or playing audiobooks. That's called passive learning. You're just receiving information from the outside. Active learning is the complete opposite. We actively try to recall the information from inside our own head. For example, trying to recall what you learned without looking at the book, doing practice questions, or imagining yourself teaching the material to someone else. Here's something you can start using right away in your study routine. Next time you want to memorize something, instead of just rereading the same paragraph over and over until it looks familiar, break the content into small chunks. Take 1 to 2 sentences at a time. Read that short chunk, then close the book and try to recall what you just read. Open the book again to check if you got it right. Then close it and try to recall it again. Repeat until you can remember the whole chunk perfectly without looking. When you use this method, your brain will feel uncomfortable. But that exact discomfort is what helps the information stick in your memory much longer. When we learn passively, just reading or listening to lectures, it's like standing in the gym, holding a bubble tea in one hand and a slice of pizza in the other, while watching other people lift weights. You're not going to get anywhere. On the other hand, active learning is like putting your brain through an actual workout. It makes the knowledge stay with you longer and gradually makes your memory stronger and stronger. Now let's move on to the next method, spaced repetition. Simply put, if something is really important and you want to remember it long term, you should review it on a schedule, after 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, and 30 days. Every time you hit one of those time marks, take a moment to review the material. But here's the important part. Don't open your notes right away. Instead, first try to recall everything you can from memory. Only after that should you open your book or notes to check and correct yourself. The science behind this is actually pretty simple. If you only learn something once and never review it, your brain assumes that information isn't important and deletes it. That's exactly why we need to review. Repetition is the mother of learning. However, the timing of your review is even more important. If you review too soon and too often, you're just wasting time. If you wait too long, you'll feel like you're learning everything from scratch again. So the sweet spot is to review right when your brain is starting to forget a little bit. And the aforementioned milestones are the best times to review. Also, trying to recall everything before opening your notes forces your brain to work harder. Your brain doesn't remember things by just taking in information. It remembers by pulling information out. The next method is practice. This one sounds obvious. Nobody learns how to swim by only reading theory and watching videos. The best way to learn is to jump into the water. If you don't actually apply what you've learned through practice and exercises, all that knowledge stays as dry, boring words and formulas on paper. When you do practice problems, your brain has to actively recall the information and think through it. It feels uncomfortable. But once again, that discomfort is exactly what creates strong, long-lasting memories. The next method is the Feynman Technique. This method is named after the great scientist Richard Feynman. Billionaire Bill Gates once said that Feynman was the best teacher he never had. Simply put, the Feynman Technique says the best way to learn something is to teach it to someone else. Here's how it works. After you finish studying a topic, close the book, stand up, and pretend you're teaching that concept to someone else. You don't have to repeat the textbook word for word. Use your own simple, everyday language to explain it clearly. While you're teaching, you'll quickly discover the gaps and weak spots in your own understanding. That's where you go back and fix them. This process helps you understand the material deeply and remember it much longer. To see the clear difference between these learning methods, take a look at this chart. It shows the retention rate of different study techniques. As you can see, simply reading and listening to lectures give you the lowest retention rates. Meanwhile, practicing and teaching others give you the highest retention rates. The next method I want to share is the 80-20 rule. Most of us have heard of this rule, and it applies perfectly to studying. 20% of what you learn will determine most of your exam results. The other 80% is mostly unnecessary and just wastes your time. Before asking, "How can I remember this?" you should first ask yourself, "Is this knowledge really necessary?" After reading an article or a passage, you don't need to memorize the entire thing. Just focus on the main ideas. A lot of people read books thinking they have to remember everything in them. But that's both impossible and unnecessary. Before starting a book, ask yourself a few key questions. Then, as you read, look for the answers to those questions. If you can find those answers and they improve your life or understanding, that's more than enough. Albert Einstein didn't remember the exact speed of light. He also didn't remember his own home address. It wasn't because he had a bad memory. It was because he was smart enough to know that not everything is worth remembering. The next method is health. Your brain and your body are deeply connected. Good physical health leads to a strong memory. Sleep at least 8 hours a day. Eat nutritious food, drink enough water, and exercise regularly. These habits will keep your brain in its best possible state. Unfortunately, most students today are sacrificing their sleep and health just to get more study time. Trust me, that's definitely a big mistake. When I was still sitting in school, one of my teachers said something I've never forgotten. If you have to sacrifice your health to study, then you shouldn't study at all. Later, I realized how absolutely true that is. Basically, when you don't get enough sleep, your brain feels like it's mildly drunk. Your memory and learning efficiency drop dramatically. The final method I want to share is creating mind maps. Simply put, this is the ability to summarize complex information into a few key core ideas. You don't always have to draw it on paper. Sometimes you can just visualize it in your head. People with excellent thinking skills are masters at this. They don't try to memorize every complicated detail. Instead, they summarize the content into a few basic phrases or ideas and remember those. Of course, this comes after they've already understood the full material. To make it easy to understand, let me use the content of this very video as an example. If you try to memorize every single word in this video, it will be very difficult and honestly unnecessary. But remembering the main ideas is much easier and far more effective. For example, in this video, I've shared 7 techniques for remembering what you learn more effectively. Active recall, pulling information out of your own brain instead of just passively taking it in. Spaced repetition, reviewing material at increasing intervals, 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, and 1 month. Practice, actually doing exercises and applying what you learn. The Feynman Technique, teaching the material in your own words, as if explaining it to someone else. The 80-20 rule, focusing only on the most important 20% of the material. Taking care of your health, sleep, nutrition, and exercise. And finally, building mind maps to summarize and remember knowledge easily. As you can see, remembering that simple summary is much easier and more effective than trying to memorize an entire complicated page. And finally, I want you to remember one important thing. For many years, you might have thought, "I'm bad at studying. I have a terrible memory. I'm just not smart enough." But maybe no one has ever taught you how to learn properly. School teaches us a lot of subjects, but it rarely teaches us how to study effectively. The moment you truly understand this, learning will no longer feel like torture. You won't have to sit for hours just to forget everything the next day. You'll start to think, so my brain isn't that bad after all. It was just waiting for the right way to learn. If this video helped change the way you see learning, then please remember this. Being smart isn't about remembering everything. Being smart is knowing how to make your brain not forget the things that truly matter.